Greetings, friends and family. Welcome to episode number 6 of Baba Talks. I need you to sit tight just for a second. I'm going to play the intro, as I always do, and I promise I'll be right back. Thanks for sitting through the intro. I appreciate it. I am Baba the Storyteller, your ubiquitous bard, fresh from Beijing, China. Well, not quite fresh, but having returned from Beijing. It was an interesting trip. I'm going to give a little information on that, and then there are a few other things I want to talk about that, to me, are more important than the trip. But I know you guys want to know what happened and why has it been so long since another Baba Talks came out. Well, Baba Talks episode number 5 was in Beijing. You remember I was on the street. And I was really busy there. I mean, I was up from like 6 in the morning and not getting back to my hotel from the schools until 7, sometimes almost 8 o'clock at night. And literally, I was working that whole time. Grateful to be working, thankful to be working, and also appreciative of the fact that I have a job that can touch hearts and souls. So not many people can say that about their work. So it was very fulfilling. The memory that I think I'm going to have most about my travel to Beijing has to do with some of the human interactions are always at the top. But something that just had my adrenaline going and that had me like really excited was over my life. I've always read, I love Eastern culture and Eastern theology and Eastern spiritual practices. So I've always read things like the I Ching, studied things like that. The Book of Rings, for those of you who know it. The Art of War, which really, whenever I say the Art of War, people look at it kind of funny. It's not really about war. Read it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, things that were happening while I was there, such as I went to go visit the Forbidden Palace. And while we're walking through the Forbidden Palace, I'm encountering all of these things that had only been academic to me, that I had only read about. But I was able to touch and feel and look at the ground and know some of the things that had occurred there historically. And it was exhilarating. I think that for me is probably the most exciting part of having gone to Beijing. And it makes me want to go to other parts of Asia where I've read so much. In case you don't know it, I am a bibliophile. I love history. And I think that's just a part of being a storyteller, an oral historian or a griot. History, I think for most of us, is a living, breathing thing. So when I'm able to encounter it on my travels, it fills me up. It fills me up. It gives me a buzz. So that was a big part of the trip for me. And I also met a lot of people who, I guess when you travel, or I can't speak for everyone, when I travel, I'm always looking to learn from others, especially when I'm traveling in other cultures. And I would say on this trip, I had more opportunities to learn than probably almost any other trip I've ever taken. Not everyone I encountered spoke English. So sometimes it was navigating the culture, and my Mandarin, I won't even pretend that I speak it well. But my Mandarin was ingratiating. How is that? At times it was ingratiating to others, the little bit that I could speak. But I found the people, when I did attempt, very helpful. You could almost sometimes, if you stood away as an objective observer in the culture and you're just looking and watching, you would feel as though you're not integrated into it, that no one is recognizing you, and people are going about. It's like being in a big city where no one speaks your language, like being in New York. You're in downtown and you don't speak the language, if you can imagine that. But when I made the attempts, or I did approach people, there was a warmth. And I'm walking away with that. I could make a choice, glass half empty, glass half full, but I tend to look for the full glass. And even the empty glass, I'll say at least there's something in there I can get to. But anyway, whenever I travel also, I try to bring back symbols of my craft, storytelling. And over the years, I've to different countries I've traveled, I've bought back things such as masks that represent different types of stories, clothing, artifacts, things that represent the story of a people. And while I was in China, I was fascinated by the calligraphy, by the writing. So most writing utensils are small to write on paper, but they come in different varying sizes. So while I was there, I became fascinated with their calligraphy, and I picked up, this is a writing utensil. I don't know the Mandarin word for it, so forgive me. But what they do with these, and they're much smaller. I got this one just so I could use it to show people and demonstrate what I was doing. But they dip it into the ink and then they write with it, right? And they're much smaller, like I said. But while I was there, I was walking through Jinshan Park, and there was an an elderly woman, who had a huge one, and she was dipping it into a bucket of water, and she was writing along the sidewalk, and she was making these characters, and it looked like she was making like whole sentences and whole phrases and creating like a single paragraph. That's what it looked like to me. And then the water would dissipate. She would sit, she would look at it, and then the water would dissipate. And it fascinated me so much that I stood there when I was at the park, and I must have watched her do this like 3-4 times. And I was with her watching the water dissipate. It was meditative. I didn't know what the word said. I didn't know anything about what she was writing or why she was writing, but it was fascinating to me. So I picked up those sort of implements because they represent storytelling to me. And no matter how long I'm gone, and this is something I need to express, no matter how long I'm gone, no matter where I'm gone, there is always this impending desire to get back. Because sometimes when I travel, I feel like things are going on back here that I need to be a part of, that I need to address. And when I was younger, I didn't realize this. Those of you who have read my book, Road of Ash and Dust, you'll remember the part where I was talking to Booba. I didn't realize this in all those conversations with him back then. He had told me, your work is not here. At the time, I'd wanted to stay in Africa. I thought I could live there and just be there. But he said, your work is not here. You were here to learn the craft, but your work is not here. Your work is with your people. And I'm feeling that more now in this current political environment than I ever have before, because the number of calls that I get, there's an exponential increase in the calls that I get, especially for school campuses to go and perform or appear because of the aberrant behavior of children. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. 2019 is going to be my 25th year doing this craft, 25 years. So when I first started, the need that was happening in the community and in different places, it wasn't the need that is happening now. I used to go more when I first began, and people would want to just engage and commune and be sort of entertained and reflect. So the storytelling at that time when I first started was more of a deflection from what was actually happening. But as I've grown, my understanding of the craft has grown, and I'm also engaging people whose understanding of what I do has depth. So when they call me to campuses now, they're not calling me for entertainment value. They're calling me because they want to have some sort of an effect on their campus. And this is what I do. This is what I do when I travel. So it's a mix of a lot of things. The Jalia, griot cultures of West Africa, psychology, chemistry, communication. I mean, it's a blending of so many different crafts. But I'm appreciating that, especially now in this time where there's a devaluation of our humanity. And I'm finding that is what is occurring, that is making the things happen on many of our campuses that are happening. So when I am engaging, I'm always thinking and trying to see beyond the externals. Because if you just look at what's happening on the externals, you won't understand anything. Here's another way I can put this, an example. Most of the time, people are speaking to or at one another The words that they're saying do not reflect the meaning of their heart. Does that make sense? Most of the time, the words that people are speaking, unless they are extremely effective speakers, are not conveying the intent or the meaning behind their heart or their mind or what they're thinking or feeling. So rather than just listening to the words of what people are saying, I try to listen to what they call the prosody, the inflection, the voice, the rhythm, the tone, and try to truly understand what is happening with people when we communicate. And I like to call that, when I work with students, I like to call it listening with your heart. So the need has been exponential for me to go into a lot of places and teach what it means to listen with your heart. Stories are just one of the tools that I use. But I would almost rather that, and I know this is going to be sad to say, that this need didn't exist. I mean, I appreciate being busy. I appreciate having a purpose in life. But this purpose being in response or reaction to the ugliness that we're immersed in our society right now, that's not something that I can appreciate being busy for. I don't know if I'm probably rambling right now and this doesn't make sense. Let me bring most of this to a close and then I'll move on. What I'm really saying is storytelling, it mediates that epic battle between the heart and mind the way nothing else can. It really does. And what I'm finding is that when I'm engaging people, regardless of their socioeconomic standing, regardless of their political affiliations, stories seem to bring us into a communal occurrence, a communal space, where when we're sharing our stories, our differences don't matter as much. Especially if you are steeped in your craft. If you've mastered your craft, you can feel the public or the audience when you're with them, and then you can somewhat act as a guide and open up and facilitate the conversations that need to be had. We are not using storytelling effectively. We are not. And I think that's why I'm so busy, is because, well, I'm I'm good at what I do. All right. Now, I want to bring this to a close because I do have to go to work. So I'm going to have to get out of here. But before I go, I really want to express my appreciation to everyone who has been supportive of me. People have been helping me out with the book and making sure I can do book signings, and they've done readings and inviting me, and there have been a lot of you, and I want to run down a list of names. Actually, you know what? Episode 7, I should run down a list of names of everyone who has been open arms and pushing and pulling me and supporting me in what I'm doing. I'm going to do that, episode 7. But right now I have to get to work. So the reason why I have to get out, and I apologize for rushing, is, well, as you know, you've heard some of my stories. There are so many more bridges that need building. So I'm going to go. Until we meet again in episode 7, Doni Doni, Kononi Benyagada.